Hey guys, let's get more news about Dallas, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Cowboys news: the two Jalens receive praise for their off-season work so far. The names of two up-and-coming Cowboys wideouts will be easy to remember. With their lack of moves in free agency, the Dallas Cowboys front office is challenging players on the bottom of the depth chart to take a step forward this season. That's seen at several positions, including wide receiver, where they released Michael Gallup yet brought in no veteran replacements. Instead, they're counting on players such as Jalen Tolbert, who is entering his third season with the franchise, and Jalen Brooks, who is going into his sophomore campaign. Thankfully, both players seem ready to rise to the challenge. That's at least what Todd Archer of ESPN believes, as he picked the two receivers as his top surprises for the Cowboys during the offseason. In a large piece that covered every team in the league, Archer said Brooks has been learning to fight his way through traffic while Tolbert has displayed the versatility to move all around the field. With CeeDee Lamb skipping the voluntary portions of the offseason program, it opened up more opportunities for young receivers Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks. Both showed flashes of ability. Brooks was able to work through traffic well, especially on tight throws on slants. Tolbert worked all three receiver spots and was able to make plays at all different levels. With Michael Gallup gone and the Cowboys not adding a veteran wideout as of yet, Tolbert or Brooks could be in line for the number 3 role behind Lamb and Brandon Cooks. Todd Archer, ESPN Tolbert, who was a third-round pick in 2022 out of South Alabama, had just 2 receptions as a rookie but saw that number increase to 22 last year. The offense took a step forward when he took snaps from Gallup, who had been struggling. Brooks was a 7th-round pick last season and made the most of his limited chances. The South Carolina product had 6 receptions on 6 targets for 64 yards. His sample size was small, but there was a lot to like. Despite free agency inactivity and multiple departures, Dallas remains near the top. The Dallas Cowboys offseason has been one of confusion, with several starting and rotational players walking out the door and hardly any reinforcements coming back the other way. As such, the consensus is that the Cowboys roster is severely weaker than last season, and on paper, it is hard to argue. But while some consider Dallas now one of the also-rans, Mike Florio ranked Dallas 16th in his rankings. It appears that not everyone shares that opinion. ESPN has compiled a list of all 32 NFL teams and ranked them based on the age of players, their talent, and production. The Cowboys, despite all of the moving and shaking this offseason, are still considered to be one of the better teams in football. Dallas comes in at number 6, with the Detroit Lions, 5, New York Jets, 4, Baltimore Ravens, 3, Kansas City Chiefs, 2, and the San Francisco 49ers, 1, above them. Its nucleus of players is considered the best or near the top at their position. Dak Prescott is seen as a top 10 quarterback. Argue amongst yourselves on that. CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons could be seen as top players in their positions, and Trayvon Diggs is a star among the cornerback fraternity. Throw Darren Bland in there, too. We then add in DeMarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, Donovan Wilson, Brandon Cooks, Osa Odigizua, Jake Ferguson, and Jordan Lewis. Dallas' cupboard isn't as bare as some might think. But are they the 6th best in football? That, right now at least, is up for debate. Dallas Cowboys expected to move on from defensive superstar after season. The Dallas Cowboys are entering one of the most pivotal seasons in recent franchise history, considering everything that's on the line in 2024. Owner Jerry Jones has made it clear the Cowboys are going all in for 2024 and decided to retain Mike McCarthy for one more season to see if he can get the talented roster past the first round in the playoffs and possibly reach the Super Bowl expectations Jones expects. After a fantastic regular season where Dallas won the NFC East with a 12-5 record which gave them home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, the Cowboys were dominated by a young, surging Green Bay Packers team. There was even a portion of the fan base who wanted the team to move on from Prescott and attempt to plug in Trey Lance, the former first-round selection who the 49ers traded a fortune to move up and select. Ultimately, Lance never worked out in San Francisco, but they got lucky hitting on Brock Purdy. Last season, he was the third-string QB for the Dallas Cowboys. Prescott was in the discussion for NFL MVP this season and closed out arguably the best regular season of his career. The Cowboys entered the wild card round matchup as 2-score favorites over the Green Bay Packers, who have a first-year starting QB and the youngest roster in the NFL. Still, the Dallas Cowboys brass has made the decision to let Prescott play out the final year of his current contract instead of extending him earlier in the offseason, which would have freed up money to add new talent around him. Instead, Dallas made minimal moves in free agency and have sat back while other teams reached extensions with their star players. If Dallas doesn't make a significant playoff run, this team could look very, very different in 2025. Regardless of how the season goes, blogging The Boys, Matthew Holleran believes Cowboys defensive star DeMarcus Lawrence is playing his final season in Dallas. Lawrence has been a great Cowboy during his 10-year tenure in Dallas, but his 11th season this fall will likely be his last, writes Holleran. The Cowboys spent their second-round selection in this year's draft on Western Michigan edge Marshawn Kneeland. The 22-year-old's best trait is his excellence in stopping the run, and he profiles very similarly to Lawrence, albeit much less polished. With Lawrence set to hit free agency after this season, Dallas will almost certainly slide Kneeland in at his spot, saving them considerable money at the position, writes Holleran. These savings could open up cap space to give fellow edge rusher Micah Parsons a long-term extension next spring. Fittipaldo, Dak Prescott is not a viable option for Steelers in 2025 free agency. While there is still much to be decided in the 2024 season at quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, some are already shifting their attention to the offseason and free agency ahead of the 2025 season when it comes to the signal caller for the black and gold. Regardless of what happens with Wilson and/or Fields, there is some buzz regarding the Steelers and Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott being a realistic fit in free agency. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler stated last week that the pairing could make sense as the Steelers might have a need and the organization would be a great landing spot for Prescott with head coach Mike Tomlin at the helm. But for the Post-Gazette's Ray Fittipaldo, Prescott simply isn't a viable option for the Steelers. Dak is making over $40 million with the Cowboys, right? So for me, no matter what happened, let's say he has a bad year in Dallas. He's not going to come down to the point where he's going to be a bargain, Fittipaldo said, according to video via 93.7 The Fan on YouTube. Dak has been like, top 12, top 10 type of guy, even if he's not viewed that way anymore. Is he going to want to take a $10 million pay cut? So, I don't think that's a viable option. And to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen to Fields or Wilson. I don't want to call it a disaster, but I think the hope within the Steelers organization obviously is one of those guys works out. And I think preferably for them it would be Russell Wilson and they could ride this out for a year or two beyond 2024. While the Steelers might be hoping, and preferring, that Wilson works out in 2024, leading to a long-term deal between the two, best-laid plans can often go awry. There is a legitimate chance that the Steelers are being discussed as a landing spot next offseason for someone like Prescott, assuming the Cowboys ultimately don't get a long-term deal done with him, leading to him reaching free agency. Prescott had a great season in 2023 with the Cowboys, completing 69.5% of his passes for 4,516 yards and 36 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions. He was a Pro Bowler and led the NFL in passing touchdowns last season and will be just 31 next offseason. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of Dak Prescott? Leave your opinion in the comments.